This one's for my dad. Cheers. Cheers, pal. Smooth. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Take a Sip podcast and welcome to episode 4. I can't believe that we are already in episode 4. I'm so excited to be here. As per usual, if you are new here, welcome. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. I have a very special guest with me today and a very special episode. This episode, we are going to be talking about grief. Today is a very, very sensitive, emotional day for me. Today is actually March 31st. I'm not sure exactly when you guys are going to be watching this, but today's March 31st. And today would have been my dad's 59th birthday. So I felt in honor of that, it would be crucial for me to talk about grief and kind of how the grief journey has been. If you guys are new here, my father passed in 2021 and my best friend also experienced a great loss in the same year. Yeah. In the same year. So I felt like it was really important for us to touch on this because I know a lot of you guys probably followed me from me sharing a bit about my grief and kind of the loss of my father and how he was very present in my life. So that is why I decided to film this today. We did take a shot for him already of his favorite tequila, Cristalino 1800, in honor of Take a Sip. I think we should take a sip. And this doesn't always mean that you have to take a sip of alcohol. But for today, it is. Sometimes it may be tea because the tea may be hot. Sometimes it may be coffee because it may be too early in the morning, girl.
Or water if we're dehydrated.
Oh, water if you're you just came from the gym. But today, it's going to be Cristalino 1800 in honor of my dad. That was his favorite tequila. So without further ado, this is my best friend of almost 20 years. Almost 20 years, nearly 20 years. We have been through some of the craziest life things together, or we've witnessed some of the craziest life things together. And it's been a journey. I feel like I know every part of your life besides your childhood.
Yes. And it's so crazy because sometimes we go through these like scenarios where maybe we're not talking as much, but then when we talk, it's like, okay, we're back right where we left
off. And we're like, oh, damn, that happened?
And it's almost like our lives align up. It's like, almost like we're going through the same things, you know, so we can kind of console each other.
Yes.
You know, and ironic that we both experienced the loss of our present fathers, you know, and had shared that same grief. Because I remember when you were sharing with me, or when I found out that your dad had passed away, I thought, oh my God, I could not imagine my dad dying at this age. I would have never thought in a million years that 9 months down the road I would be experiencing the same thing.
And being in my same shoes. Yeah, it's pretty unfathomable. I think because, again, we saw them as so young that it was pretty unfathomable. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, I do want to allow my friend to introduce herself and a little bit more about who she is and what she does. Because, you guys, I really do not surround myself with anybody who is not of high quality as a human being, and just in general who you are and who you've become. I think that the friends that have stayed in my life have been friends that I'm going to have for a lifetime because of our morals, our values, because of who we are as people. And Alexa is a gem. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and give her a little background about herself, and then we'll get into our grief.
Okay, so where do I start? Currently, right now, I am a financial coordinator for a very prestigious aesthetic office. I work for a doctor. He is local to this area, Dr. Needles at Skin Perfect Medical. So if you need any filler, Botox, you know where to go.
That's where I go.
And then also, prior to me jumping into aesthetics, I was actually a makeup artist for MAC for about 7 years. And then I actually grew a freelance business that is now very successful in my time at MAC. So I continue to do that. And I generate a lot of money off of that still. And a lot of my clients are longtime loyal clients, and I think for a lifetime I'll cater to them, because now, even at this point, I mean, they knew me before kids, before marriage, before, you know, the loss of a parent, before my career transition. So to me, they're family, and I also make money off of it as well. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And just to get away from the financial part of what I do.
Which, by the way, she just is she's a boss, period. Like, she is one of the most disciplined individuals I know. Aside from myself, I feel like we are in line with that. But even then, sometimes, especially now, I sometimes reach out to her and I'm like, dude, hold me accountable because I'm slacking over here. Or hold me accountable because of this. But that's one good thing about us, that we can both recognize, like, hey, you're not acting like yourself, or hey, you're like falling off, or hey, like,
and I think too,
what's
that's
going
how
on?
we, you know, they always say like birds that flock together. You know, I think for me, myself, you know, Jackie is motivated. She's driven regardless of anything. You could look at her. I mean, even thinking, okay, marriage, you know, when you were in your marriage, most outsiders wouldn't even know what was happening behind the scenes, you know? And I think it's the same thing for myself, you know. Nobody would know half of what's going on because I disguise it so well. At the end of the day, I just think like no matter what, life is going to continue, and you just kind of have to power through it. Like my mental is so strong that I will have a weak moment. I can't sit here and say like, oh, I'm so strong, nothing can shake me. But I know at the end of the day, cry, whatever emotion I'm feeling, it's like, it's another day tomorrow, and you just kind of got to trip.
And it really is like that. Even when we are both having like emotional breakdowns or whatever, it's like she'll text me and she'll be like, Jackie, da 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 da, all these feelings, and then I'll respond, and then I'll be like, okay, and then she's done. And that's it. And then it's like the next day. Yeah. And the next day it's like, bitch, guess what? And I'm like, oh, dude, you were just dying yesterday. Yeah. But it's like the fact that you just know how to like, boom, 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 I need to express these feelings, and then you let it go. And then it's like, okay, well, life didn't stop. Right. We have to keep going. So that's exactly what happens.
Yeah. And I think just us growing up together plays a big role in like who we are today too. I actually met Jackie in high school. I think it was freshman year. I had started dating somebody at that time who happened to be friends with Jackie first. Mm-hmm. And we laughed about it years later. He's like, that was my friend. And I'm like, well, she's my friend now, you know?
Yeah, I don't even know what he's doing with his life right now.
And I was just like, he's like, oh, you should introduce yourself to my friends. And I'm like, okay. Fast forward 19 years, I would have never thought like, oh, this relationship is going to take off. You know, I think we started, what did we do? We went to the movies and we ate that night, like just being teenagers, you know, and I think it's been great to kind of experience life from a teenager to a young adult to now, you know, womanhood and even motherhood, that, hey, you know, we're both doing this alongside each other, you know, and kind of share the same struggles.
And the way that life has really evolved, I think that's probably one of the most beautiful parts of a long-term friendship, is that you get to witness how much evolution has happened with your friends and kind of see how that also goes in line with your life, because so much life does happen as you age. Right. And there's so many milestones that happen throughout, and it's nice to see that you're not alone and you have like somebody like camaraderie, you know, like, okay, you too? Okay, yeah, me too, you know?
I laugh because I always think about this. So Jackie was a mom like way before me. I remember going to visit Jackie when she had Eli, and I was like a young adult, and I'm like, heck no, I don't want no kids. I'm like living life, you know. I had just turned what, 22 or
yeah, we were like 22, 23.
So Jackie was doing the whole, you know, wife thing, mom thing, and she had another baby, and I was like, nope, still not ready. And then I remember when I texted her and I told her like, it's time, I'm pregnant, you know, like, and she was pregnant too. Yeah. So I got pregnant first with Ashton. Yes. And you got pregnant. So I named my son Ashton, and Jackie had named her daughter Mila. And months later, down the line, one of our other best friends, her husband was like, did you guys plan this? And I'm like, plan what? And he's like, you guys are best friends, and you named your son Ashton, and Jackie named her daughter Mila, like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. I'm like, no, we did not. But now that I think about it, it always makes me laugh because they were born the same year. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, they were. Literally, like, I was waddling to her delivery room. Yeah. Like, I was dying, out of breath, exhausted, and I'm like, can you just have your kid already, dude? Like,
I was in the hospital for 3 days, and every day Jackie's like, I'm coming over. Yeah. Big old stomach. I lived down the street from the hospital at the time, bringing in food, and I was just laying there like, I just want this baby out, you know. So that was a good experience for me because, you know, I remember seeing you in the hospital with your firstborn, you know, and then having you there with my firstborn, you know, both firstborns were sons, and we could share that, like, again, that same, like, life experience of being boy moms, you know?
Yeah, and that moment.
Right.
Yeah, and Ashley was so small.
Yeah, and Jackie actually really made that experience feel great. I don't want to say that I had, like, baby blues, but for sure there was probably like the last day. I was there by myself with the baby, and Jackie's like, you need to take pictures, you know, you need to make sure you have this. And I still see those pictures from time to time when I'm, like, reminiscing on just, like, my baby. And I'm like, I'm so glad that my best friend was here to take those pictures, and I have them forever, you know? Yeah. So that's something that I would cherish forever, you know, because motherhood is a hood, but I mean, it's like the
it's
best.
the ghetto hood, girl.
It's the best. So, you know, those are, you know, things that I hold, like, very dear to my heart, for sure.
Same. Some of, like, the biggest milestones have been together. Yeah. So, and I mean, what happened with us unexpectedly with our dads, I don't want to call it a milestone, but at the same time, it's a very real part of life that we're not here forever, yeah, and that tomorrow's really never promised. And I think that we would hope that, you know, everything goes in order. Like, I would hate to lose one of my kids before. You know, I feel like it just doesn't fall in line with, yeah, like, the order of life and the way that things are supposed to be. Like, I don't feel like any parent should ever have to bury one, yeah, of their kids, you know? And so it is a milestone in a way. Like, we all are going to that same place. And it's so crazy that we experienced that in the same year. Yeah. So before we get into really, like, the grief aspect, and what we want to talk to you guys about grief is how you kind of keep going. So that's kind of the goal of us sitting here with you guys, is how you kind of keep going and how life doesn't stop and how it really affected us. But I wanted to start with something a little bit more lighthearted. So instead of our usual, like, what gives us icks about men, because the list is never ending for that. There's plenty. That's
another podcast episode.
Yeah, so. That's for another day. That's an episode in itself. That's a whole, yeah, series. Sure. But I thought it would be so cool to share maybe a memory of your dad that brings you, like, joy. Like, something that makes you laugh, something that he did, anything.
Oh my God. There's so many, just because my dad was a character, to say the least. Literally brought that energy everywhere. You know, he could never be serious. I want to say something that brings joy to me, and then if I close my eyes, I could envision it like it was happening right now, is the day that I had my son. For sure. I remember him walking in. Well, it was a journey to get to that day. It was like,
girl, it was like 25 days. You were in labor for like a month.
When everyone was texting me, I remember, you know, it was kind of not uncomfortable, but I'm like, okay, I'm in labor. My dad's texting me. You know, you feel like you can connect more with a woman, mm-hmm, on that level, you know, versus, like, your dad, because they don't know what it's like, you know, and then you're like, I'm getting ready to push this baby out of my pussy, like, and then my dad's asking me how I'm feeling, you know.
You're like, I'm feeling a little stretched.
But I will never forget, like, him walking into my delivery room with just this, like, gorgeous, like, bouquet of flowers, and was like, his whole world changed that day too. Not only did it change for me as a new mom, but for him being a grandpa and having, you know, everyone wants a grandson. You know, every man wants a grandson. So I think for him, it was just, and he looked so much like me that I think it took both him and my mom actually back to, like, when they had me, you know. Mm-hmm. So just the joy I seen in his face holding him is something that I will never forget, you know. And I captured it on video and picture. So it's like, I can't wait to sit down with Ashton one day and kind of, like, relive that memory with him, you know, because it's just so precious and unforgettable, really.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful memory. I think that I'm going to share the same. So, for your dad, maybe it was to have a grandson, but for mine, my dad always wanted to be surrounded by girls, so he was so happy to have daughters. And actually, my dad has 4 daughters, so it's me, my sister, and he has 2 other little girls, which would be what, my stepsisters or half-sisters? My half-sisters, and my brother is the only guy, but my dad always had that like vision of like being surrounded by girls. And so my daughter was born a year and a half or so before my dad passed. And I think that witnessing him hold his granddaughter was the most joy I've ever seen in him. Like, it was like this moment had to happen. Yeah, you know what video I'm talking about.
Tearjerker.
Literally, he was sobbing, and I had 2 kids before that, and yeah, he was happy and emotional. He didn't want to let the babies go, and he was hogging them and stuff for my mom. But when my daughter came, it was like it was like witnessing, like, I don't know, like, it's such a deep love, and it was beautiful. It's like one of the most beautiful memories I have, and I'm so happy too that I have a video of it, and I have a video of like his actual reaction, his real tears, and like my daughter did not want to be in his arms. She was like, "Wah!" She looked busted. I was like, "Girl." But my daughter has such a fond memory of my dad. Yeah. She still, literally yesterday, she goes, "Mom, I miss Grandpa." And I'm like, "You do?" She goes, "Yeah, he loved me. I'm his princess." And I'm like, "Yeah, he does love you. You are his princess, you know?" And she goes, "Yeah, but I know he's in heaven." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's in heaven, but he still loves you." And like, I wish I would have gotten to witness their relationship, you know, and what that would have been like. Because I know that she would have had him wrapped around her finger like nobody's business. So I think that it's the opposite, you know, like for your dad, it was like to have a son or a grandson.
What's just crazy is I had my second child, which turned out to be a girl, and I remember him just the ecstatic of like, oh my gosh, it's another baby, and then it was a girl. But too, that same time frame, like she turned 1, and then a couple months later he had passed away. Mm-hmm. You know, so for me, I'm just like, what would have it been like had he still been here? You know, she would have been literally the ruler of his world. You know,
yeah. And Arya is
girl. That's another podcast episode.
Just to talk about her, girl, because Arya she's something else.
Yeah.
She's cute as a button, but she's another world button.
Now, like, when the kids do things, I'm like, I gotta send this to my dad. And I don't even really think about it until reality kicks in, and I'm like, well, you can't do that, you know? So I think still, and I feel like that's forever, that you'll always feel like that. You know, your first instinct is to like send something funny or send something like that makes you happy, or like great news or sad news. Like, you want to reach out to that person. You know, I think that will never go away, and you'll always be like, let me do that, and then
you remember,
and then reality.
Yeah, I think that happens to me quite often,
especially with having the littles. It's like you want to share so much of their life with people that love them. You know, and for me, I always think like, wow, you know, my kids didn't get to experience him in their lives. But I think it's kind of cool that I was able to give him that joy before he left. Yeah. You know, is be able to experience that and know like he had 2 grandkids, you know, and that in itself is a blessing for sure.
Yeah, and that you got to experience seeing that, because I think for my siblings, they don't have kids. And I think one of the most hurtful things for my sister, even though she doesn't really like open up too much about it, is his absence in what her life steps would be. His absence in her wedding, his absence in her having kids, and she'll never get to witness what it was like for my dad to be there to hold one of her kids. And I think that that's a very painful, soft spot for her. And I understand, I empathize, because I'm so thankful that I have those memories. Even today, when I was like looking at old videos and stuff, it's so nice. It's like so beautiful to be able to like see him with my kids. Yeah. You know, and so I empathize with my sister so much, because I realize how hurtful it must be to not be able to have that memory of something that you created with like the person that created you. Yeah. You know,
that's the one thing that I'm like, I struggle with, is I don't have siblings, you know, that we share the same dad, that when everything was happening, and even now, I don't have someone to reminisce, like, remember when dad did this, or, you know, I miss dad today, or, you know, like, even just down to like planning the funeral, you know, I felt like I was in autopilot, because here I am, I have a 1-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, you know, I'm trying to like navigate through this like reality, and I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I wish I could pick up the phone and call my sister, or I wish I could pick up the phone and call my older brother. Like, I miss dad. Come, console me and stuff. So I think it's great that you guys have each other, to kind of like share that. And even John, like, yeah, he's the littlest one, but could be almost like your father figure, and be that like missing piece as far as like a man. And I think your dad would be really proud of like where he is today, and really stepping up to that, and even giving Chell away. I know.
Oh yeah, that was like, ugh. That definitely was like, whew, very emotional for us, because my sister didn't want anybody there. And I think I understood why, because I think that she was just trying to like separate the feelings and all the feelings. But I was like, dude, you cannot not have us there. So they ended up eloping, and last minute my brother gave her away, and I think that was like one of the most beautiful moments ever. And like my brother telling Kevin, Kevin is my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, telling him like, okay, like you will take care of my girl,
You sure you want to do that?
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, like major tears, and it was so beautiful. And like even hugging my brother, I feel like a sense of my dad, like my dad's body, or like, I don't know, I feel like a sense of my dad. So it really does make a difference. And even today, like I said, today would have been my dad's 59th birthday, and like the first thing that we all thought of in the morning was like to text each other, like, today's dad's birthday, and like, I love you guys. If you guys need to talk, or if you guys want to go out and do something, like, everybody was like cohesive with like the messages,
Yeah.
And it's nice to have somebody who understands your pain, because to feel that pain alone is so heavy.
Yeah.
So heavy. And I think that's why too, again, I'm thankful to have been in the position that I was in before you, so that I could have been there for you when it happened.
Yeah.
Because it was all unexpected.
I even think back to like when your dad passed away, and hearing about it, I was just like, what? I was like shell-shocked. It was like he was here 1 week and then going to Mexico for a vacation, and then, supposed to come back, and then it just progressed to something else. And I remember texting you every day, and like, I don't even know if Jackie's going to respond, but I'm still going to text her every day, because if this happened to me, like, I would need somebody, checking up on me, at least consoling me. And I would even say, like, I don't know what to say, and I don't know what this feels like. I haven't lost a parent, and then when I thought about myself, I'm like, was that me preparing myself? Or God's way of like, hey, like, you're going to need this in return sometime soon, and
unknowingly.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you were still grieving at that time, so it was like, there was just so much emotion behind like reaching out to me and, being there for me, that it was raw, and it was so real, because it was like the same type of pain, like the loss of a father, the loss of a present father, and it's like, you could only share that with someone so close to you that really knows you and knows the history behind that,
And knows the pain too. So to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, my father passed January of 2021, if you guys are new here. And he passed very unexpectedly to COVID. Literally within a matter of 12 hours. It was just like shell shock for all of us. It was great. Like, it just almost unfathomable. And obviously I went through the motions of, my own, the way that I was grieving on my own. And I spent a lot of time pretty drunk with a water bottle of vodka. And that was my water for the day. And then I spent a lot of time kind of disconnected and not doing much of anything, just crying. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that is the one period of time where I give my kid's father so much credit, because he was there and he would cry with me, so that I wasn't alone in my grief. And I have so much respect for him in that aspect, and so thankful for him in that aspect, that he was there. And so along with you guys, my friends, and everybody who wanted to be there and tried to be there for me in whatever which way they could, because I feel like there's no right way for somebody to be there for you. There's no
other than just being there.
Just being there, yeah. Or like allowing you to vent whenever you want to, and then leaving you alone if you don't want to talk anymore. And then a couple months down the line, we get news that Alexa's dad was diagnosed with cancer.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing my dad. I think back to that year, and there were two specific times that I had seen him, and I thought to myself, I'm like, something just didn't seem right or feel right, but I kind of brushed it off a little bit. And even more so, I think about it now, because I reminisce on that year so much. I'm like, he tried to see me so much. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I'm in the area. I'm going to stop by. Like, what do you and the kids need? I want to come see the baby. And I was just like, I mean, as most grandparents, they want to see the kids and stuff. But I felt like it was more than usual, and I kind of questioned it, but I didn't really think anything of it. Now thinking back, I'm like, wow, that time was so crucial.
Do you think that he knew?
I do, yeah. I think now, and my aunts have even said, like, I think your dad knew and he was scared. And I think, like most men, is they try to suppress that. They don't want to know that something's wrong with them. They don't want to go to the doctor, and, they're men. They're going to fight through this, that when I found out something was really wrong, my cousin called me, and I remember this day so vividly. She called and she's like, your dad cannot die. And I was like, what? And I was the last to know what was really going on. Obviously my dad's like, I can't tell my daughter this, And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, but let me call my dad and figure this out. So I called my dad. He's, acting so casual, like, hi babe, how's your day? And I'm like, you need to tell me what the fuck is going on, and you need to tell me right now. I'm an adult, I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, like, you cannot hide anything from me anymore. And that's kind of when he broke down. He's like, I don't know what's wrong. He's like, but something's wrong, and then it was literally from May to September. Mm-hmm. And I think back to that time and just where I was with work and stuff, that I had so much spare time to offer him. I was literally dropping the kids off, going to work, going straight to his house, that I had almost spent more time with him in that time frame than I had in a really long time, And I think that was really God ordained, was to make sure, like, hey, I'm going to have you guys really close, and I'm going to make sure that, he knows that you're there for him, and kind of the same, like, it was never a question whether I can come over. It was almost like he just expected me to be there every day, and it was a lot, and it took a toll on not only myself, but, I just spent a lot of time away from the kids, and, I was very subconsciously, like, distracted, but in reality, it's like, I needed that, because I have so much of that last phase of his life to hold on to,
I think that I experienced the same. I think that God gave me the same. I think that God gifted me the same in terms of having my dad. And I also think that my dad knew, because he would tell me, like, oh, I just need 2 to 5 more years, 3 to 5 more years, and I'm good. Like, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, how could you tell me that? Like, bro, what do you mean?
Don't you want to live till you're 100?
Sure. Okay, well, I don't care what your needs are. Like, I want you here for a longer time. And he would tell me, like, things like that. And I would see him, and he would be so tired. And I remember, like, this huge weight on my heart to ask him to come work for me. And I argued with God that day. And I was like, I can't offer him to come work with me. I can't pay him what he makes. Like, he was a truck driver. There's absolutely no way I could afford him. And God said, just listen to me. And I was like, whatever, dude. Fine.
He would own Geo money at that point.
Okay, I was like, at that point, yeah, he literally, like, he was a cross-country truck driver, so they make a lot of money. Yeah. So I called him. It was in the summertime of 2020, and I called him, and he's like, well, actually, I've been thinking I'm really tired. And then he's like, but let me talk to Myra, which is his wife, or his widow now, and he talked to her, and he called me right back, like, a couple hours later. He said, okay, I'm going to quit. And I was like, what?
Wait, let me look at the bank.
I was like, wait a minute. I was like, Dad, but I can't pay you, like, I can't pay you, like, a lot. And he's like, well, how much can you give me? And I told him how much I could give him. He goes, okay. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm going to take a vacation. I'm going to go to Mexico for 2 weeks. And then after that, I'll be there. And I was like, okay. And he did. He came. And the craziest part is that he never collected his check until he left to Mexico. So from August to December, he didn't let me pay him. So I would take him out to eat. I would take him to, we would have breakfast together. It was like the most beautiful time. I'm so thankful that God gave me that.
Like, you, with your dad being a truck driver and then, having
he was
his
gone.
other life in Mexico, it was like, you really didn't see him until that last phase.
Yes.
Where it was very consistent.
Yes, and where I have the most videos and pictures and everything of him, like my most fondest memories. And I feel like in that time frame, he got to tell me so much about his life and like about what he thought, down to like what he thought about aliens and just like the craziest stuff. Like I feel like I can answer for him because of the time that we spent at the end. And he definitely, it was just like such a true gift that I was given, and I think that he knew, or maybe he knew something that he wasn't telling me, and I think that maybe God put it on his heart as much as he put it on mine for him to be there. And it was a really beautiful time, and a lot of people that I love got to experience him, like the girls, Sophia, and just the girls in general, Marissa. Everybody has so much love for him. Everybody cried for him. They were super loving towards him, and he was just such a vital piece of what we did. He made the workplace so peaceful,
non-workable.
Yeah, he was like not stressful. He goes, "Hey, you guys chill. Like, we're just here working, And aside from that, I got to spend a lot of time with him and made a lot of memories, and it was just truly a gift to then having to let him go. And I know that you experienced the same thing, having to let your dad go, even though it was like your time that you were cherishing with him. And then in the end, it was like, this is it. And it's not your choice. It's not your decision. It's not what you need. It's time for him to go. And I think that I grieved a little bit different than you did. And I also think that the way that we process death is so different. So I'd like to hear your take on how you process that grief and how you were able to pick up the pieces.
It was... I have a lot of regret because my dad was married to somebody that, not only myself but my family were not too fond of. So I reflect back on so many years and just different times where I kind of avoided seeing him because I knew seeing him meant that I had to see her.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel like so many people... I just want to stop you for a second, because I feel like so many people don't have a relationship with people that really matter, that they genuinely love, and then later they're like, but I should have. Yeah. But I should have. And this should be, I hope if you take away anything from this episode, is to rebuild the relationship.
You never know.
Now.
The saying, like, tomorrow's not promised is, like, so true. And if you think about somebody that you love and you're just avoiding them for whatever reason, maybe it just may be personal between you and them, or, somebody that they're affiliated with or who they're around. Like, all of that at the end of the day doesn't
It's so trivial.
matter. Like, for me now, I would be like, to get back all those years, like, I would sit in a room with her all day if I had to.
The entire day.
Just to be around my dad.
Just to be in his presence.
And it's like, him, like, I was his whole world. All he wanted to do was be around me, and I feel bad because there were so many times where I was dodging him, not dodging him, but just dodging them.
The situation.
Because when you're married, you're one, so it was like, naturally his wife's going to want to go wherever he's going, she's here and he's not. Like, I would give anything to have that back. And I thought to myself, when your dad passed away, I'm like, man, I think I would be okay if my dad died, but I would not be okay if my mom died. And just a small piggyback on that is me and my mom are extremely close. I wouldn't know what to do if she passed.
Oh, dude.
My mom is literally...
I always tell my mom, I'm like, girl, the day you decide you're ready to go, make sure the casket's big enough for both of us. So, because I'm going with you.
Right. So I kind of, when he passed, I was like, why did I say that? Like, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
It was a really weird phase of my life. I had just dealt with some infidelity in my marriage that drew a big wedge between my husband and I. Some separation, I was,
of course.
yeah, I was then dealing with some learning issues with my son that I was not foreseen at all. So it was like, not only was I dealing with the loss of my father, I was dealing with marital issues. I was dealing with my child and his issues that I didn't even know where to begin. Some mornings I would wake up and the biggest thing for me is I never wanted to cry in front of the kids. My marriage really had taken a toll the last year, and I cried so much from that around them that I do not necessarily with my daughter, but with my son. I know that that's affected him, and as a mom, that crushes me and that makes me feel less than, because I'm like, how could I inflict that on someone so precious and so innocent? But I told myself, you're gonna cry, you're gonna do this alone without anybody. Given my daily schedule, I didn't really have the time to mourn, and I had the kids by myself, and full-time work, freelancing still, that I would drop the kids off at the time their school was like 10 minutes from work, that I would literally be bawling my eyes out on the way to work. Literally, I would turn the fan on in my car, like the AC full blast, and I'd be like trying to dry my makeup and stuff, and like wipe away all the tears and stuff. But that was like my time to cry, or like getting in the shower and crying for 10 minutes, and then being like, okay, there were times which, again, like with you say, like with David, like with Justin, I was just like, you have to take the kids. Like, I literally just need today, and I remember that weekend, he passed away on a Friday. And that next day I said, you have to come pick up the kids, and I went to this spot that my dad went to often to like ride his bike. And I just sat there and I just cried and like asking God, like, why did this happen? How could this happen? And just thinking, like, I actually had a vivid dream the night he passed. I was just so, given the scenario with his wife and the family and stuff, it was a very complex situation to be in. I think had my aunts not been there, I probably would have not been able to see my dad. And actually, I was on the phone with you.
Yeah, I had just got to Miami. I was walking into my hotel room.
I called Jackie that morning or that day, and I said, I just left from seeing my dad. Like, I think this is it. I don't think he has much longer, like maybe a couple days. I had literally just got home from seeing him. Like, maybe I walked in the door. It took me maybe 30 minutes to get home from his house. I sat down. I called you.
I was barely
still
walking
on
into
the
my
phone with you.
Yeah, we were still on the phone. I was walking into my hotel room in Miami.
And they called. And I'm like, let me call you back. It's my aunt. And my aunt was like, he's gone. And I'm just like, what? Like, you see this person 1 minute and then the next they're gone.
Even though you knew.
Right.
Yeah. It's still so surreal.
That dream, I think that's what has helped me so much, because, in the dream, I'm racing to get to him. And I'm like, I have to see my dad. Like, I have to see him. And all of a sudden my car shut down. And I'm looking at my car and I'm like trying to start it. And I'm like, my car's not starting. Like, I'm just going to get out and run. So I go open the door, and my dad's at the window. He's in like a tux and everything, and he has this white rose in his hand. And he's like, honey, it's all good. I promise. And he walked off into this like ray of light. And I'm just like, that to me was him telling me, like, God's got me. And I'm on my way to heaven. There's nothing to worry about, regardless of like, yeah, we think, oh, it's sad for them, but it's sad for us because we're here having to do life without them, Mm-hmm. I always think back to that dream because that was God telling me, like, everything's going to be okay, and I still have my moments, if I see something or if I hear something, but I think too, having the kids, and even that weekend specifically, like, you were gone, Allie was gone, my parents were out of town, I couldn't just spiral. Yeah. I had to just be like, I'm still a mom. Yeah. I still have these little babies that I have to take care of, and I think if it was the other way around, I think it would be the same, like, for my dad, like, damn, I miss my daughter, but these kids come first, you know? And I think that's, for me, I've wanted to be a mom my whole life. You know, I was with somebody for years and years and years, and I never got pregnant. I was never, you know, like, had no, you know, accidents or hiccups or anything. And then finally in my, like, late 20s, I ended up having a baby, then having two, but I was just like, this is what I've wanted my whole life, you know? That them and their happiness and their safety and everything, that's what matters the most to me, you know? And I think that was God's way of saying, like, you're going to go through some pain, but you're going to have these, like, babies to help you. And two, even, like, my son is literally the spitting image of my dad. Mm-hmm. Everybody in my family looks at him. It's like, you can see your dad when you look straight in his eyes, you know? And it's like, that's so peaceful and reassuring to have, this knowing, like,
you have
that my dad is here. You know, and he lives through the kids, you know, and even, like, down to my daughter. Like, my daughter has that same, like, personality, that same, like, spunk and, like, you know, like, charismatic, like, funny personality. She does goofy things, and I'm like, this is literally my dad all over again, but in a little baby girl, you know? So, for me, I think motherhood is what's saved me, you know, and making sure that I put them first. And then two, just the drive that I had before, now really pushing that into gear, being this morning mother, you know, that, like, I'm still going to do this. I'm still going to conquer this, you know. Like, my dad was so proud of me, for sure, like, my number one fan. Like, my mom, of course, proud of me and all my accomplishments, but my dad, for being his only child and his only daughter, anything I did, he was just like, babe, I am so proud of you. Like, you know, like, I remember when I first got hired at Mac, I mean, I wanted to work at Mac my whole life, you know, that when I finally got that opportunity, and this is in an era where Mac was just like, if you were there, you were
you were that girl. I remember that.
Bitch, you know?
Do you guys remember the Mac era? I remember when that was like,
the happiest times of my life. You know, I was like newly single.
Oh, and when you got the necklace, remember?
I was just so like, oh my God, this is like.
Do you guys know about the necklace? Yeah, like, do you guys know about the necklace? Yeah, that was like such a big deal.
Super, like, anytime I see it, it just like takes me back to that time. But he would come and see me all the time. Like, he would do goofy things. Like, he would be hiding behind a mannequin or, like, hiding behind, like, a kiosk or something. And girls would be like, there's this guy here looking for you. And I'm like, guy? I'm like, who? And then I'd be like, oh, it's my dad, you know. But he would just, like, anything. Like, babe, can you, like, have lunch? Can you take lunch early? Do you want something? Like, he was just so proud of me, you know, everything I did. And I think now, like, I think that's one thing I really miss, is just, like, sharing my accomplishments with him. You know, I think even just down to the kids, and even with Ashton, you know, like, he would just be like, I'm so proud of you and this woman that you are, you know. And I think for him, he knew in his mind, like, she's going to be okay, you know, because he knew already who I was, you know, and what my DNA was and the type of person I am as far as how I navigate through life, you know. And I think it's helped me a lot, even not even with just grief, with just, like, my marital issues. Like, fuck, this sucks, you know, this is rough and this is hard, and I couldn't even imagine, you know. But yeah, that's the thing, is, like, grief is just something so different, and being a mom, I think about them. I cannot even imagine my kids feeling the same pain, or, like, losing me. To me, like, we always joke, like, damn, we're getting old, but we're still fairly young, you know. And to think, like, my mom, she just lost her dad, and he was 97. And I remember when he passed, I was like, I would have given anything to have my dad till he was 97 years old.
Same.
You know, me being an old bitch too, like, I'm 70, and, you know, my dad just died.
We're still kicking it.
And, you know, having him see my kids graduate from high school and have their own kids and stuff, you know, because my grandparents were able to experience that. They were able to, you know, see my kids and, you know, have those memories and stuff. And likewise, I have those memories for my kids, that now I'm just like, whatever I can do, you know. And a lot of people joke, they're like, you do so much stuff with the kids, they're so little, they're not going to remember any of this. I could die tomorrow.
Yeah.
And my kids are going to be like, man, my mom really did everything she could for us. She took us everywhere, you know, like that is all they would have is those memories.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
pictures or videos of those times. Even though they don't remember them themselves, like they have pictures and videos of whatever you would have left behind for them.
Yeah. And I definitely try to be more present with them too, you know, because I think when I was a young adult that, and you know, like most young adults, like you're so selfish, you're so into yourself, and you're just like, I'm 21 now, I can drink and do whatever the hell I want, I'm going to Vegas, that you don't want to be around your parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not until you get older or you become a parent that you're like,
oh my god, I love you so much. Yeah.
Like me, I like want to be up my mom's ass 24/7, like, what are you doing, you know, and vice versa. She always wants to be like, where are you at?
Me too, with my mom too.
I hope that it's the same with
my
kids.
mom would have a curfew for her, like an unspoken curfew. I'm like, where do you think, like, who do you think you are? Why haven't you got home yet? I don't know why you're out till 10 o'clock at night, girl.
And it's, you know, I think that's the biggest thing is just knowing that, like, you're going to go through some shit. You know, like, life is not easy. You know, life is not promised. And, you know, there is more to life than just the day-to-day. You know, that's enough for me to be like, I'm going to do what I can while I can.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to me, I would be wasting so much precious time. Like, for me, like, if I'm up at 6, I'm like, the day is
too late. Me too. I'm so bad.
I hate it. You know, like, I'm just so driven.
Morning people unite.
Right.
Yes. Sophia too. If Sophia's not up at 4, she's like, oh.
Yeah. That, like, I can't imagine, and not to discourage or not to, like, you know, be insensitive to anybody that really is struggling with, like, grief and, you know, depression and all that, but I think, why waste life in that scenario? You know, like, why if they wouldn't want that for you.
Yes.
You know, and I think for my dad, all he kept on saying was like, I'm gonna miss you. And in my mind, I'm like, you're gonna be dead. Why? What
like,
do you mean?
I'm gonna miss you.
You know, and I think for him, he would be like, and I think that's why I had that dream, you know, because my dad that was so my dad's personality. It's like, whatever you need to do, babe, you do it. You know, like, don't worry about me. Like, you worry about you worry about the kids, you know, that I think him knowing that, like, I'm still powering through life, I'm still, you know, going through the motions and, you know, making every year a better year, that he would be so happy with that, you know. So, and two, just setting an example for the kids, you know, like, life is not easy, and you're going to be in scenarios where you don't know what to do, you know, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to be heartbroken and devastated, and, you know, like, it's okay to have these poor me moments, but what do you do with that? You know, for me, like,
you can't stay in them forever. It's like, give yourself a moment, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just, you're doing yourself a disservice and the people around you a disservice by sulking for too long. Like, you should feel your feelings, but know when it's time to say, okay, you felt the feelings, now guess what? X, Y, and Z has to happen.
And it's so crazy because kids are so smart, you know, and even for you have the kids, you know, like, they pick up on everything.
Oh, totally.
Now Ashton's like, if I'm crying or I'm upset, like, Mom, crying, you're sad, you know, and it's like, I want to be able to say, like, yes, I'm sad, but it's okay, you know, and this is why I'm sad, you know. I can't imagine falling into that depression and being like, I have friends that have parents that have gone through, like, tragedies or, you know, the loss of a child or something, and they don't ever come out of that. And all they remember is, like, my mom was an alcoholic, you know, she was a drug addict, you know, she lost herself, you know, and it really kind of derails their life, and it changes who they were supposed to be, you know, because they had that absent parent, you know, and it's like, you know what it feels like to have a parent be absent, you know, and then you go and put that on your child. You know, I don't want that for them. I always want them to know, like, your mom is always here, you know. I may have a bad day, I may be mad, sad, you know, frustrated, whatever, but at the end of the day, like, tomorrow we're gonna hit the ground running again, you know. And I think that's, like, the biggest driver for me, for sure.
It's the kids, and to kind of keep going and to know that, like, you have, aside from that, you have real responsibilities. You have a real job. You have a real, like, expectation of you and what is expected of you in a lot of aspects of your life. And I feel like, too, being the only child that is like in your parent, like with your parents too, I feel like they have an expectation of you to show up a certain way, not just for the kids but for them, and like there's just so much expectation on your life in general that I feel like that's a huge driving force for you to kind of power through and like keep going. And you've done it. I've seen you do it. Like I've seen you, like I said, our text messages sometimes go from like sad, and then all right, that's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm done. See you tomorrow. Yeah. Like that's it. I feel like I've been able to witness you. I don't know. Like I feel like I've been able to witness you and a lot of your strength. Evolve. Really evolve. Yeah. Especially with the kids being present. Yeah. And like the kids being like kind of the reason that you've become the person that you become, because you've always successful. Yeah, you've always done great. You've always done great. You've always been disciplined. But I feel like when the kids came, it was really like, oh, I'm doing this. Yeah. And I'm doing it because it's just me. Yeah. And it's kind of always been just you. Even when you were a single child, like obviously you're a single child, it's still you. I remember you moving out of your dad's. I remember you moving out of your mom's. Yeah. Like I remember all those stages, and it was kind of always like Alexa for Alexa. But when the kids came, it added so much more. Not pressure, but like levels. Yeah, like levels, like driving force to kind of keep going in life and to kind of keep pressing forward. I think for me, in my dad's death, I think what was pivotal for me is my mindset. Not so much like my kids being my driving force or like that was the reason that I got out of that rut. I think it was like one day I woke up and God said, that's it. You're done. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? I wasn't done. I was planning on crying today. Yeah. I was planning on being a sad bitch today. Like, what do you mean? What does this mean? And it was like, no, you're done. You're going to get up and you're done. Because your life is not over and there's still a lot of purpose. And there's still a lot of things that you're going to have to fulfill regardless of what your feelings are now. That's it. I've given you time. You can't be like this forever. And I was like, I remember I just like sat up and I was like, okay, all right. And that was it. I got up that day. I took a shower. I did my hair. I did my makeup. And it was like this life-changing moment. And I think that the biggest way my dad's death impacted my life was in that aspect that I realized after that day how many days I was wasting that I would never get back. And then it gave me perspective on the way that my dad lived, because my dad had a few near-death experiences where we almost thought we lost him in the ICU because he was diabetic. So he went into diabetic coma. And I remember after his last diabetic coma, he didn't care about anything. He just kind of was like so carefree, it would piss me off. Yeah. Like too carefree. I was like, he just did not give a shit. You know my dad. He did not give a shit. And I would just be like, oh, how could you be like this? Like, I was so type A, so control freak, so like, but he was so, oh, okay then. Like, and I would just be like, you're driving me crazy. But I understood it. So Enrique vibes. But I understood it. After his death, I understood how he viewed life, because he was so close to dying that he was like, none of this really matters. None of this, all this trivial stuff, none of these things that we stress about, none of this really matters. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons that nothing really hurts me anymore. I feel hurt for certain things, or I feel like my natural feelings, but I feel like nothing will ever hurt me to the depth or capacity of my dad's death.
Yeah, I mean, unless it was the kids.
Or death. You know, my mom passing, or my sister. Like but other than that, I feel like nothing is really like...
It's kind of weird, too, because you almost feel like disconnected a little bit from that emotion when you hear about it. So I've had friends, I wouldn't say like best friends, but I have like friends, you know, like in my circle that have lost somebody. And it's like, you're like, oh my God, I'm sorry. You know, I'm so sorry. But it's like, you know what that pain feels like, that you're like, not that you don't care, but you're just like,
Oh.
I've experienced this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, nothing can hurt you or shake you because it's like, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived through that, you know, especially when it's like a parent, you know, and sometimes I find myself thinking like, you're really lucky, you know, because some people, you hear these tragic stories where they like lose their mom and their dad in like horrible car accident, and it's like they have no mom and no dad, you know. I at least had him for the 33 years, you know, while I was here, and I always think like, I didn't have him enough, you know, but he had me for that time frame, you know, like his end of his era, you know, like those 33 years, as an adult having me, you know, where I was like a baby and, you know, a young kid and young teen and all that. But, I don't want to say that, like, again, like going back to just like, I had that time to really like soak everything in. There would be times where I would just go over and he would be laying there asleep, resting, and I would just me being with him and him being next to me, like we wouldn't even say anything sometimes, you know. And I think that meant more than anything, you know. That would maybe have meant more than like hanging out with him for the day, going to have dinner somewhere or whatever, you know. To him it was like, this is special time, I'm dying and I just need my daughter here, that's it, you know. And I think the same too, like there wasn't anywhere else I wanted to be other than that.
I always go back and forth with myself when I think about our scenarios, and I always try to like see what's worse. Like would I have wanted last moments with my dad the way that you had, and seeing him.
I think about that too.
I think about it all the time.
Like I always like, damn, I feel bad for Jackie. You know, like she didn't have no warning. You know, I mean, granted, like that time frame where he was calling you and you're like, is this for real? Is this really happening? I'm like, okay, well,
it was like
let
12
me get
hours.
John and Chow and like let me like get my way there and stuff, you know. And then me getting that call, your dad passed away, and I hadn't even gotten there yet, you know. Like I don't know how I could process that, because for me, I remember that day when I woke up the day he passed, I was driving to work and I was like, my dad's gonna beat this.
Yeah.
Like my dad's gonna live a healthy long life. Literally the day he passed away, I felt like that. That's how much like faith I had, and just how much like
hope.
Yeah, for sure. Hope. That when my aunt called, my aunt's like, you need to come here and you need to get here fast. I was in Newport Beach at the time. It was a Friday, Labor Day weekend. I was on the 405. So if anyone knows 405,
oh my gosh, it takes like 2 hours to go a mile.
Right. I literally got to his house, no traffic. Not one single car in my way. And I feel like, again, too, like, that was God. That was God getting me there, you know. I walked in, I talked to him, I hugged him, I kissed his hand, you know, I whispered in his ear, like, please, like, watch over me and the kids, you know, like, bring me something tonight, you know, like, watch over me. And literally, like I said, within 30 minutes of getting home and getting that call, you know, I'm just like, wow, I had that opportunity to see him, to touch him, to be there in like the flesh, you know, where for you,
I didn't.
Driving there, I would go crazy, you know? You couldn't get there fast enough.
No, I couldn't get there fast enough. I think that I always think about that. Like, I go back and forth with myself, with my siblings. I really try to like not talk to my siblings too much about like those thoughts, because I don't want to bring them down with my own thoughts. But I do go back and forth with myself, like, what would have been the best thing? And I think that the only thing that gives me peace is like the way that God wanted it was the best thing.
Yeah.
The way that God said and wrote his story, and the way that he said it would end, was the best thing. That was the best thing. Because I think about, like, I don't know, it happened so fast. I kid you not, you guys, it happened so fast. Like, in the morning he called, was crying, I'm sick. And then by the afternoon was like, I'm feeling better. And then by like 7 p.m., they were like, don't call your dad anymore. He's hyperventilating. He doesn't have enough oxygen and he's hallucinating. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I'm like, it's like, well, somebody's taking you on this, like, point, yeah, right? Like somebody's taking you on this emotional roller coaster. No, they didn't intubate him until
the next morning.
No, we were getting ready. I had just booked the flight, and I remember I had like tears, like I couldn't even see my phone because it was flooded with the tears that were dripping down my face. But I knew as the oldest, I had to book it like for my brother and my sister, and like just get them to my house. And I like my phone, I couldn't even see my screen because it just was covered in tears. And I remember like my sister called while I was blow drying my hair because I showered so I could be fresh. And she called and she's like, Dad's wife's trying to get a hold of you. Like, you need to answer right now. And I was like, oh, dude, I didn't even hear it. And like, I pick up and it's his wife. And she's like, they want to intubate him. And I don't know what to do. And like, she didn't want to be responsible. You know, she felt that pressure, especially because she knew how close we were to him. And they say in Mexico that once they intubate you, that they don't like that. That's it. And it's like a thing in Mexico. If you guys don't know, it's a thing that once they say they intubate you, it's like you're gonna die, or you do die in their hands. And I was like, listen to me. Like, if the oxygen is no longer working, it's on the max level. There's nothing left to do. The only way that you guys can save him is to legitimately intubate him. So do it. You have my permission. Do it. Yeah. I said to do it. And as I'm saying that, she told me my dad could hear me. And she said that he's like, he can hear you. And my dad sat up when he heard my voice and he signed it himself. So he gave permission for them to intubate him when he heard my voice. And I think that he knew that that would be his last saving grace if there was any chance at all. And so I remember I got off that call and they took him back. And then we didn't hear anything. We get in the car, we drive to TJ. And as soon as we cross the border, my uncle calls and they let us know that he had already went to heaven to not miss the flight. And it never gets easier to talk about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, dang. You know? And yeah, it's always like, oh my gosh. But I remember that they said, don't miss the flight. He already went to heaven, and he ended up having 2 heart attacks. He had one heart attack while they were intubating him, and they brought him back. And then he had a second one, and they couldn't bring him back from that one. And that's the way that he passed, and it was so fast. But I remember by the time we got to his town, they were already in Mexico. In the towns, they walked the casket through the town.
That's the other part that I thought was kind of crazy, and I'm just like, could I have done it in Jackie's scenario? Because for me, my dad had always said, like, I want to be cremated. Do not bury me. So we had time to, like, okay, we got to wait for him to, we got to get his remains back. We got to, you know, and my family's huge and they have so many friends and family that I knew we were planning a fucking celebration. Like, this party was going to be massive. For you, it was literally like he died, they were walking the casket around, and then you were burying him literally like within like a short time frame. You know, like, I don't think I could handle that pressure in that amount of time.
That's what I'm saying.
So close together.
That's what I struggle with. And I'm like, was it best? And I think that for my own peace, it was best, because when we finally made it there, I remember I collapsed. There was like mariachi behind us, and I just collapsed at seeing, and I just wanted to like pull the casket out and like shake him. And I couldn't even do that because the casket was covered in saran wrap because of COVID. And so I didn't even get to see him one last time. But I think to myself, and I'm like, it's like when you don't want a certain image of something in your head. I'm so thankful that I don't have that image. Well, even I remember him like the way that he was the day that he left, and the hug, and I remember the warmth.
And that's what you want to remember.
Yeah, and I thinking about it, I'm like, would I have really wanted to feel his body cold and nothing there?
I remember you saying that too, like when I would call you and stuff, and like just, you know, vent and cry and be like, you know, this is like my dad's scenario now, and you would be like, I don't know how you're doing it, you know, because you're watching this person die slowly every single day.
Yeah, you know? Knowing.
Right. Knowing. But there's no going back from this, you know.
It's just waiting. Like, how much torture is that? It's like waiting for the inevitable.
I think my dad too, like once he started realizing that like there was no point of return and this was the end for him, that I think it was uncomfortable for him to have me there sometimes because he knew that it was ugly, you know, like it was not something that he wanted me to see. And every time I really tried to like find my tears back. But I think, you know, I come from his body. Like he knew like I was hurting inside. Mm-hmm. I had told him from the very beginning though, you know, I said, look, whatever way this swings, like I will be here to see you but I cannot be here to talk to the corner. I cannot be here when the corner comes to get you, you know? So it was kind of weird when I left the house that day, because when I got in my car, I threw my head back and I was just crying and crying. I had like a jacket of his and some small other articles that were his. And I remember saying, like, this is the last time. Something told me, which now I'm going to, that was God, you know, talking to me. It was like, this is going to be the last time you see him. And I remember when I got home and they called, like, I knew I wasn't going back, you know, and I made sure that I let his wife know, and I let him know too. Like, it's not that I don't want to be here. It's not that I want to push this on her and make her responsible for it, but that is not an image that I want in my head. That is not something that I want to remember. You know, I want to remember you for what I remember you for, you know, and even though the end was ugly, you know, it was like, it still wasn't that. You know, it still wasn't seeing that person, like, where you can't get to them.
How valuable were those articles to you? Why do those mean so much?
You know, it's just so crazy.
Like, I try to process that because I have my dad's jersey and I can't let it go.
I only had, I was only able to get 3 things. So with the fact that the relationship between me and his wife was so ugly, was that she wasn't willing to let go of any of his stuff. So it was kind of like a tug of war, which is kind of sad because, you know, my husband has a daughter from somebody else, and we have the 2 kids together. If her dad was dying, I don't really care what our marital status is like at that time, what his situation is with his ex-wife, any of that. Like, I'm sympathizing that your dad is dying, and I want you just come, be around him, take whatever you want. Like, none of this is going to matter to me at the end of the day. You know, I would just want Justin to have his 3 kids with him, and that's it. Yeah. You know? So I was able to grab 3 things. So one of them, my dad was a musician growing up all his life, you know, like, was in a band, played the drums. So I was able to take his little iPod shuffle. So this is how, like, old school my dad was. A stupid shuffle, you know. I was able to take that, and then he had a work jacket that he wore all the time. And actually, this work jacket he wore when he met Ashton for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
So I have this jacket where I could show Ashton, like, look, this is Grandpa's, and he wore it the day that he held you for the first time, you know. I actually wore it the other day for the first time, and it was a very surreal feeling, because I almost felt like this warmth when I put it on, aside from it being a jacket, but, like, just this, like, comfort.
Why are you warm? It's a jacket, bitch, duh.
Just this, like, comfort. And if anyone knew my dad, they always knew he always carried change with him. And I was just like, I would always say, Dad, this is dirty. Like, get a debit card or something. You know, like, he always had change. And he loved Tic Tacs. So I remember I wore the jacket, and I put my hand in the pocket, and I felt stuff in it. And I was like, I rushed to pull it out, and it was a little Tic Tac and change. And I was just, like, bawling my eyes out. And I was like, oh, my God, you know. But to me, it was like, materialistic things don't matter. Like, even, like, with my mom has so much stuff that I'm like, I wouldn't give a shit about any of it, because I just want my mom.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like the same with him, but it's like, at least it's these small things that I can pass on to my kids and be like, this means something. Or, you know, like, for you, like, your dad loved that jersey too, you know.
Oh my God, my dad was a hardcore Pumas fan. So in all his videos, pictures, he's wearing one of his jerseys. Right. Yeah.
I think,
and his damn glasses.
Wasn't he wearing the jersey when you had Mila? Or was he wearing something else?
No, he was wearing a button-up, but he wore his jersey. I have videos of him in his jerseys, and I have one, my sister has one, and my brother has one. My sister has his glasses, and my dad wore his glasses.
All the time.
Dude, anywhere. It would be pitch black, and he was wearing his glasses, and I'm like, dude,
you know what? One of the videos that sticks out so much, and that's like, I wish that if I can give one piece of advice to people, is
take pictures and videos.
Videos is like the biggest thing.
And
like,
you hear that.
Yes, especially even like live. Like, now that we have like this live feature, like, that's great too. But like, I have a few videos of my dad, and I'm just like, oh my God, they're like gold to me, you know.
Yeah.
And they're with the kids, so I'm just like, that even more sentimental to me, you know. But that video that you have of was it Christmas Eve when your dad's dancing?
Oh, when he's dancing, yeah, that was my graduation party.
That was just like such a happy moment for everyone, and that was like Enrique mode, you know, like he was just like happy to be living life with his
my
little Christmas
God.
sweater on.
Yeah, he made an ugly Christmas sweater and he was so proud. And he actually won first place. But since he lived at home, I felt like it was so biased for him to win because it was like a gift card. It was my house. So I was like, you can't win. And he goes, well, mine is the ugliest. And I was like, I know, but you live here. Like, you can't win. That's like cheating. Somebody that didn't cut, like somebody that came has to win. He goes, oh, I don't like this game, but his sweater was so fucking ugly, and he was so proud because it was an ugly sweater party, and he was so proud of it, and he looked hideous. And he was dancing. He was battling my son. My son Eli was probably like 3 or 4 at the time, so little, and he was battling. They were battling.
Those for sure help me on days when I'm like really like going through it, or I have time to be alone and the kids aren't around. I go to my laptop and I just like literally like on repeat. I just like watch it, you know, and you relive that memory. Like, yeah, you can close your eyes and envision these memories, but it's like it's different when you see it. Yeah, you know.
Where are you in your grief? Like, where are you? Because I can say for me, like, aside from today, where I was very emotional from my dad's passing, and where I was very like, I don't know, like just it's his birthday. Aside from today, I haven't cried in a while.
You know,
I cried when I was in Mexico. When I went to Guadalajara, because I felt him there. So I felt his presence there, and I felt like, not his presence, but I felt how much he lives inside of me and how much love I have for my culture because of how much of him lives inside of me and who I am and my identity. So I cried there because of that, but prior to that, I hadn't cried in a while for him, maybe on his death anniversary. And I think about him every day, not all day. Maybe some days I think about him for 2 seconds, and some days I think about him the whole morning or the whole afternoon. But I'm not in that place anymore where it's like every thought is crying.
You cry.
Yeah, or every chance I get that I need to think about him. Yeah. Like, I'm not in that place anymore. I'm in a place where I'm like, oh, I think about him, or today, like, to honor him or honor his life. Like, I find it important to talk to people about, like, how you should cherish people that you love, and, like, I don't know, I find it important to do that. But other than that, I feel like my days are okay. It's a roller coaster,
you know,
but it's okay.
It's crazy that we're actually talking about it right now. But I think for a long time, because I had dealt with that, and then I had dealt with like the infidelity with Justin, and just the craziness surrounding our marriage and stuff, and then everything with Ashton. That Ashton's was really like the final nail on the coffin. I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, God, like, what are you trying to show me? You know, that I didn't know what I was doing, you know. And for me, like, I'm big on like fitness. I'm big on eating healthy and stuff. And I got to a point last year where I look back at pictures now, and I was gaining so much weight. Not even because I wasn't working out, I wasn't eating right. Like, I think just the stress on my body, that was just like,
your body couldn't take
and
it.
I ended up going to the doctor actually, and I was like, you know, like, something's not right, you know, like, I can't lose weight, I'm not getting my period, I'm getting gray hair. Like, it's not even in my genetic to get gray hair like this. Like, my mom is 62 and she just started getting gray hair like 2 years ago. You know, like, even my dad didn't start getting gray hair until he got sick. So he was like, you know, this is going to be a hard pill to swallow. He's like, but I believe that all the stress that you're going through has really pushed you into premenopause. And I'm like,
excuse me?
I said, I am 34 years old, you know?
I don't even know what menopause means.
My mom literally just had menopause, so I'm like, I'm not old, you know, like, I'm getting old, but I'm not old. That I was just like, okay. And he's like, you know, your cortisol levels are like through the roof. He's like, and this is not, I mean, aside from like, yeah, it's an ego thing for you because of the weight. He's like, just health-wise, like, this is not good for your heart.
Yeah,
you know,
period.
like, you can really stress yourself out and give yourself a heart attack, you know, a stroke. You're going to end up with like high blood pressure. And that's when I really started thinking about the kids.
I think we had talked about our hormones at that period. I remember that because I'm like, dude, are you feeling a little jacked?
Well, even like,
because I was feeling jacked too, and I was like, are you feeling jacked?
Even like my libido was low, and I was like,
yeah, I was like, something's all right.
I should be.
I didn't have to like myself. Yeah.
That I was just like, okay, you know, and I was still really trying to navigate through life like that whole year. It wasn't until I would honestly say like maybe a month ago that I was finally like, God, you got to take the wheel on this because I can't do this anymore. You know, like I was just getting so tired of crying and being stressed out and just like trying to figure out why and trying to like get reasons to why this happened and why did my dad die? Why did Justin cheat? Like why are all these things happening to Ashton? Like I wanted to know why so bad. That's like me. Like if we get in an argument, no, I want to talk right now. Like I don't want to talk later. I don't want to just forget like this didn't happen. No, I want to know, you know? And that's like a yin and a yang. Like it's a good thing and it's a bad thing.
Yes,
because like there's those things like let's just say for example you go through your husband's phone and you find something that you don't want to find. Like you want to see it because you want to know, like, damn,
but then you really didn't.
But then you can't get out of your mind, like, why did I look for it? You know, that I finally have gotten like my groove back in the gym. I finally, you know, like have more energy. I finally like am seeing things a little bit more clear. You know, I'm not letting things like stress me out anymore. And actually, you know, like even with Ashton, like life has changed drastically with him. You know, and everything as far as like him and his school has like been nothing but like, you know, overachieving and accomplishments and stuff that I'm like, when I finally just said, God, you do your thing, like, I can't carry this anymore, like, that's when everything changed. You know?
I think that you got triple whammied when life happened to you.
Yeah.
Because for me, the infidelity in my marriage had happened 2 years prior. So I had already had time to process, and then death came, and then separation came. You know, like, I had gaps in between, and I think you just got hit. That bitch side flag.
Yeah, and that's like
literally you were looking straight and it just knocked you out, girl, from like, left field.
You know, and I think too, like the last scenario in my marriage that it wasn't it was like to my, you know, gut and just like me as a person, but because I had already felt that pain, that I was like, this isn't shit.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just gonna keep going on, you know?
But I think initially when it did happen, it's because it would just all came at once.
Well, even too, like...
It was just like a whirlwind of like life. And it's more than infidelity. There was a lot of other undisclosed things that happened with addictions and things like that. And like, it happened all at once. It wasn't like, oh, here's this, a little break.
Yeah.
Here's this. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And it's like you're dealing with all of these equal moving parts at once, on top of being a new mom, on top of getting this higher position at your job. And it's just like, it was just so much at once that I don't think you had time. And I think
like there was so much joy, but then there was so much grief at the same time.
Yes, and I think that your body just didn't, I feel like your body knows even before you. Like your body was like, oh my God, this is too much.
Yeah.
And it just kept taking it.
Well, even when I had talked to my trainer about it, she was like, you know, she's like, it's not even you. She's like, naturally our bodies, like, they hold on to that weight as a defense mechanism to like protect you from like what's going on. And I'm like, bitch.
That's why they say that you hold on to your trauma and like you gotta do like hip exercises to release, and you gotta do all these things to like release your trauma. And I think that's
like the good and bad thing about me suppressing things is like, for me, like I went into work literally so my dad passed away on a Friday. I was back to work on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And they were like, why are you here? Go home. And I'm like, I can't. You know, like, going home is not going to change anything. It's not going to bring him back. If anything, I'm going to be more sad. You know, like, I have to surround myself with people, with work, with everything, you know. And I think that, for me, is, like, the best thing that I could thank God for, is like having that type of mentality, is because like I could be going through it. I could be crying the whole way to my freelance, and then I get out of the car and I'm like, okay, it's time to make money. Let's go. You know, like even with the kids, like
sit down, girl.
Right. Like I'm just built differently like that, and I mean I wish more people were built like that, because it would take the emotion out of it. You know, it's like, this is life, you know. And the only thing I would say is like to have more compassion for people, because you really don't know what they're going through. You know, you don't know if the girl at the gym is struggling with a marriage that's in shambles, or, you know, a child that's having issues, or, you know, a death, or, you know, like, and death doesn't even necessarily have to be like they died. You know, it could just be a loss of a friendship or a relationship or something like that, you know. And I think now that I don't want to say I have peace, because there are times like when I do think about him, or there's times where I'm having great days, and then I kind of get this little guilt, like I'm happy and I'm moving on with life, and, you know, like, but my dad, you know, I think he would be right here like cheering me on, like, you go, babe, like, you got this and you're kicking ass. You know, I think for him, and the fact that we're so close, and you know, I really hope that God honors this. But like, my aunts have been so great to me this whole time, you know, like my dad was really close to his sisters, you know, and I think being around them brings me a lot of comfort. You know, like this weekend I'll see my aunt, and when I'm around her, it's just like, it's this crazy feeling, you know. I almost feel like my dad's there, you know. That's been able to kind of like help me and stuff. But I think now, knowing it's just life, you know, like I don't know when my mom's gonna go, you know, like, and that's gonna be a whole nother thing in itself. But at least I know, like, I've been through it and I got through it, you know, and here I am today, you know. And
I'm telling you right now,
God's grace is what saved me.
If it's your mom that goes or my mom goes first, I don't know who's, but I'm moving into your house if that happens, or you're moving into my house because
I would die.
Oh my God.
If one of us goes, I would be looking at you like, please don't tell my mom's going next, because this should have been a line from day one, and I'm not doing it.
I don't want no participation.
But you know
what? I'm breaking up with you as a friend right now. I don't want anything.
As sad as it was, I think it's great that I have my best friend that's felt this, you know. And I have these conversations with Allie a lot, actually. You know, Allie is our other best friend.
Yeah.
We've been friends for the same amount of time. And she always, like, I remember when I called her and, you know, told her everything about my dad, she's like, I think she subconsciously was fearful that Eddie would die too, and Eddie has had those like
near-death experiences.
You know? And we were young when he had that severe stroke, so I was just like, oh my God, like, what would we do if he died? You know? That for her, she's like, I don't know how you guys do it. I don't, you know, I would just, my life would end. And then like, you say that, but it's not.
It doesn't end.
You know, like, you will be happy again. Like, you will get that peace and that joy again, you know. And there's days that you're not going to feel it, you know, but like you said, like, there's times where I'm sad for 2 minutes, and then there's times where I'm sad like off and on for hours, you know. But you still, this is the new normal.
Yes.
You know, like grief never goes away. You just learn to deal with it, you know. And it's like, how do you deal with it at that point, you know?
I think
that's
the
a big
most
part of like your character.
The most important part, I think, of dealing with it is accepting that life goes on.
Right.
Accepting that, like, your life doesn't stop. And if you were to stop and just observe, even if you were to sit in your car and just observe people in a parking lot, you can, like, down to that very little step, you can observe that life continues. People walk by, get in their car and leave. Other people come, go in the store and leave. Like, if you just stop and observe the simple fact that life doesn't stop.
Or even just the realization, like, people wake up and die.
Yeah.
Like, they don't think that going to work that they're going to die in a car accident.
No,
you know?
And I think when you start to pay attention to those things more, though, after you've experienced death. I think prior to death, you're oblivious. And you don't really think about these things until after. I think that's why I have such a, like, a loving place for life. Like, I'm so thankful. Like, I'll be driving, and I'll look up, and if I see the mountains, especially being here, I'm like, oh, God, what a beautiful day. You know, like, oh, it's so beautiful. Like, it just feels so deep.
I experienced that the first year. I remember, like, I was driving down the street that I've driven down for 20-something years, you know, as long as I've lived in Chino Hills. And for the first time, I seen the seasons change.
Yeah. You actually noticed it.
Wow, the trees are, like, changing from, like, green to, like, brown.
And you never noticed it,
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Know? And it's even now, like, you just think, like, is it really worth it? You know, like, is it really worth having hate in your heart, or, you know, avoiding somebody, or, you know, like, taking the time to, like, tell somebody how you feel, or taking the time to be like, you know, even like with my mom, like, if she's not home by a certain time, or, you know, she doesn't text me right away, my mind's like racing, like, well, where is she? You know,
where are you at?
Yeah. You know, because you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, every time I see her, even with the kids, I'm like, God, please, you know, like, I pray a hedge of protection, because I don't want to feel this again, you know, but you just never know, you know. And
it's inevitable, because that's where we're all going.
And that's the thing, like, that's the one thing that's, like, for sure about life, is that we're all going to die at some point.
It's the one guaranteed thing, and I think that the sooner that we learn to really bask in the actual joy of just living. So not events, not the next accomplishment, not the next big thing, not what's in the future, but literally just the moment. Like sitting here, being in your presence, having the opportunity to talk to my friend and make an impact and just sit here and like see you smile, see you cry, see the realness in the moment. If you learn to cherish those little things, everything else seems so minuscule. It seems like it's just so irrelevant. It's so irrelevant. You go outside, and the second the sun touches your skin, you're like, it feels so good. It feels so good to be alive. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you, pal, for being open and being very just open here, and for doing this for me. I know it came from you wanting to do this for me, and I know it takes a lot to be vulnerable and a lot to be open, and especially talk about your feelings, especially when it's something so precious.
That for sure, me too. I'm a very private person.
Very.
I do not share.
She doesn't even have social media.
Socials right now. Yeah. I'm just very. I want everyone to think like it's okay, and I think I get that from my mom. Like thinking back,
just
to
very poker face.
Child, like I always thought like, damn, life was great. I never knew half the struggles, or what. Like, damn, my mom was really going through it, or damn, my parents were really struggling. They never painted that picture to me. And I think that's, for me, like, I always want the kids to think, like, my mom's so happy. Like, every time Ashton sees me, like, Mom, how was your day? And I'm like, it was great. But inside I'm thinking, like,
I had a shitty day.
You don't even know.
I got a flat. It was $1,000.
I was talking to your dad. It's just, it's, I'm happy that it's happened to me. I think it's really made my shell even harder, but in a good way. I can't say like I'm this like, damn, Alexis changed from this. She's this like shelled person. Like, no, it's just made me stronger. And I think that's the best takeaway from it. Is having that, because some people don't. And it's unfortunate that people fall into this different phase of life when they deal with a loss of somebody.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, it goes back to, like, the way that we process and really learning to, like, find the joy again. I think a lot of the healing and a lot of, like, the perspective change comes from just finding the joy. Finding the joy in the simplest things. The second that you do that, you really start to process death differently. And you really start to accept things differently. And the way that things transpire in your life, you start to see them from a different perspective. I can't think of very many times that I've been negative ever since my dad's passing. I think I have my days. Period week, hormonal week is my crazy week. Yeah. But other than that, I think that I just really try to just be happy and live in the moment and be present and like enjoy. And I take so many pictures now and so many videos of like just everybody.
As much as I'm like was devastated and heartbroken, like, damn, my dad's not going to be here to see this. My dad's not going to be here to see that. I think these things that are happening to me, like my situation with Justin, like my dad would not want to see me so heartbroken like that, or just so like, well, I don't know what to do anymore, and even with Ashton, like I remember sharing a little bit with him because he had already let us know that he was sick, that like there's something going on with Ashton and we just don't know what yet. I remember, okay, he's already on his deathbed and he's like, well, what do we have to do? Like, what does Ashton need? Like, how much money do we have to spend to, like, get him whatever he... Like, my dad was willing to go to the ends of the earth for Ashton. So I think when it really got rough and I was really going through it with Ashton, I don't think that my dad could handle that. I think he would not know what the hell to do, and he would just be heartbroken, I'm grateful that he's not here to see that, and he's just where he should be, and it's just like, God's got me at the end of the day, and we're going to figure this out,
So do you believe in God's perfect plan?
Oh, 100%.
Regardless of what it means and who
it's not even my plan, it's his plan.
And regardless of who had to go. Yeah. And when they had to go, despite what we would have wanted. Yeah. I do too. So I want to leave on a positive note. So I like to end the podcast with a positive note or like something for good vibes for the week. So anything, pal, that you want to leave the audience with, or anything that you live by, anything that like helps you get back up, or any quote, anything, drop it like it's hot, girl.
I think the biggest one for me is, in the Bible it says, if I'm for you, who could be against you? That's a big one for me. because it's so true. You know, like, there's been a lot of things against me in my adulthood, you know, and even just as of recent, you know, that no matter what, he's always stayed true to me. And his word has always stayed true. You know, like, joy comes in the morning, and that's for sure. You know, like, I could be crying all night, but the next morning it's a new day. We're blessed to wake up, you know, and that's one big thing that I implement with the kids is like, we have to thank God for waking up today. We have to thank God for our food. We have to thank God for school. Like, there's just so many things to be thankful for, you know, because you don't always get that opportunity, you know, and there's people out there that are less fortunate. You know, there's people out there that have parents that are still living, but they're dead to them because they're addicts, or, you know, they're young teen moms that were like, I'm gonna abort you, or I'm gonna put you up for adoption, you know, and you're in their whole lives like, I just want my mom to care about me, you know. Like, I really trip out on some of my friends who don't have that, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, and I hold on to that, like, I'm so grateful I even had that, you know. I know what that feels like, and that's what I want for my daughter, is like, for her to be able to pick up the phone and know her dad is gonna be there for her no matter what, you know. So that just that alone, knowing, you know, that if everyone's against me, at least God's with me. You know, that's like the biggest thing.
And I think that's like the one person that you want in your corner, or the
only person.
Whatever.
In your
Yeah,
corner,
that's
sure.
Legitimately like the only thing that I would want, or the only person, or whatever you guys want to call it. Like, I would want God in my corner, because God can fight my battles far better than I can. I've witnessed it in my own life. Especially as of lately, I've witnessed it in my own life where there's so many things that I wanted to retaliate, or that I wanted.
I'm still working on it.
Or that I'm like, there's so many things that I wanted to retaliate. There's so many things that I wanted to have control over, or that I wanted to have the last say in. And I remember just telling God, like, I want to do this, but it's against my character, whatever. And God said, don't worry about it. I got it. And it wasn't on my time, but it was on God's time. That when I got to see the way God set the table, and he sets the table far better than me or you can. Yeah. And I think that's like a great takeaway, and it's great that you know that if God for you, who could be against you? I agree. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you guys on next time's podcast. Thanks again, pal. I love you so much, and ciao.
Bye.